Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our second um, Mitchabrim call. This is 2 weeks ago. We had Nathan Sharansky with us and Professor Gil Troy. Today, thankfully, we are joining by Shira Ruderman and Dr. David Barak Gorodtsky. Mitchabrim Connection. This is the new initiative, the partnership between the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs and the JCC Association. My name is Uri Roth. I'm the director of Mitchabrim Connection. Started here at JCC Association around September 20th. And as you can imagine, about 2 weeks later, things have changed here in Israel. And we took that as a way of thinking about ways that discussions that we can bring the audience in America, and thinking about ways how to look in this war from different angles. And today, as in our second session, we call it actions, not just words. We're talking about philanthropy. We're talking about this relationship again between Israel and diaspora. And I thought about who would be better than our two guests to talk about it. I want to first introduce Dr. David Barak Gorodetsky, which is a man with many hats. He's a Reform rabbi on one hand. He's also a doctor. He's a historian. He's the head of the Ruderman program at Haifa University. He also taught in University of Chicago. I met him twice, once in Chicago, the other time was in Austin, Texas, where as part of the IAC at the IAC conference back in Texas in January. And the way Dr. Gorodetsky is a big expert also about relationship between Israel and diaspora Jews. He's also everything that goes about church and state in Israel. Later today, I will share with you. Some of you didn't get the document that I shared earlier, and I will share with you the last article that David posted on Makor Rishon, and one of about that relationship. We call it between Brit Olam, moving from Tikkun Olam to Brit Olam. And I'm so happy that he's here. I was waiting for an opportunity to have him over. So I want to invite Dr. Gorodetsky, bevakasha.
Hi, everyone. It's a great pleasure to see you all here now. Thanks, Oria, for the kind introduction, and to you and the JCCA team for having us, both me and Shira. Maybe I'll start with just a few words about the Ruderman program. Then I'll say something about where we are now, and then I'll introduce Shira, and we can move into conversation together. So the Ruderman program, which is generously funded by the Ruderman Family Foundation, is a program at the University of Haifa, which I run, which is an MA program about American Jews. So essentially, it's us learning about you for an entire MA program. So it really enables our students to develop a really in-depth kind of understanding of American Jews and American Jewish life. We have 25 Israeli students each year studying American Judaism. And we also have a 10-day program in which we tour the US, and we have the highest number of grad students researching American Jewry in any university across the world. So this is according to Jonathan Sarna, who's an authority on this issue. So we really are doing the reverse birthright at the university level kind of thing, and really teaching people really in depth about American Jewish life. And that's kind of, brings me forward to understanding kind of, discussing the relationship together with what we would like to do moving forward. I want to say that we are meeting in an extremely challenging time, both for Israel and for American Jews, and for the Jewish world in general. I'm sure you feel it. I'm sure I can tell you that we feel it here, and it's a time of immense stress and challenges. But it's also a time of inspiration. And I think there's something that we had learned in the last 2 months, is I think a rekindling of the spirit of the American Jewry relationship. I think, that's kind of, I want to read maybe just one sentence from something I published recently that we had sent you. American Jews seemed eager to demonstrate their love for Israel and their support for it. Recent decades have seen stagnation and even distancing in US-Israeli relations amid political and identity tensions. However, the horrifying events of the Hamas attack on October 7th allowed the Jewish American love for Israel, which existed in both emotional and intellectual realms, to break free from the restraints that had bound it. So I think really I can say from Israel and from here that we felt very strong connection and the rekindling of the connection in these tragic circumstances, and that was an inspiration for us. And I'd like to kind of build on this kind of inspiration to introduce you to an inspiring leader in the Jewish American community and in relation to Israel, who will be in conversation with me. Shira Ruderman, it's a pleasure as always to be with you and to hope you here with us at the program. I'll introduce Shira. I'll read her full biography, and after that we'll move into conversation about Israel and American Jewry, the current state of affairs, anti-Semitism, where are we going from here, and we'll leave room for Q&A. So Shira Ruderman is executive director of the Ruderman Family Foundation. She's a senior executive and serial achiever. Shira's impact over the past 20 years focused on establishing disability rights as a field of social impact and introducing a new paradigm for the discourse concerning Israel and the American Jewry relations. Shira holds a BA in education and MA in public policy from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, along with honorary doctorates from the University of Haifa and Brandeis University. She is a recipient of the 2022 Jerusalem Unity Award, and Shira and her husband, Jay Ruderman, were the recipients of the 2022 Jerusalem Post Lifetime Achievement Award and have been included in Jerusalem Post list of 50 most influential Jews of 2022. She was chosen as one of the 100 most influential women in Israel by the Nashim Journal. Shira has served in a variety of senior management and leadership positions, such as chairwoman of the Fulbright Foundation, co-chair of the Opportunity Fund, member of the Mass General President Consul, board member of the Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, board member of the Jewish Funders Network, Friends of FIDF, Friends of the IDF, IAC, and a member of the Institute for Law and Philanthropy. Born and raised in Israel, she now lives in Boston with her husband Jay and their 4 children. Welcome, Shira. It's a pleasure to have you.
Wow, thank you. When I'm listening to this introduction, I hope it feels like you're describing someone else. It's too much honor. So I would just say, wow, I hope it will pay off in a good conversation that we have. So thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I'll spotlight us just for a second, right? Okay, hi, Shira.
I think I did. Yeah. Sorry.
So, Shira, we've had many discussions. I think really it's an opportunity to kind of, bring forward. I see you have an Israeli flag in the background and also a tikva.
I'm talking about JCCs. I'm literally just finishing an event, not in a JCC, but another community place, which is the major synagogue in the Boston community, in the Brookline community. And I'm here for a few days. I'm currently spending my time most of the time in Israel, but I thought it's going to be a very appropriate background to say that, this conversation is very much relevant to where I'm at.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think we want to kindle we're also, approaching Hanukkah, and we want to kindle some of, the lights of hope for our relationship and for the American Jewish experience and life and for Israel at the moment, and we'll get there. But I want to start by taking you back to October 7, when this all started. Where were you at the time? How did the following days look like for you and also for the Ruderman Family Foundation?
First, I would just start by saying, as you said, it's a conversation. So once we open it up, I would appreciate for anyone saying their name and maybe opening the camera so it feels a little bit more personal. I was in Israel. I was in Israel, and I have two kids right now in Israel. So I was there with my family, my extended family, literally at my parents' house. It was Simchat Torah, and I'm an observant Jew, so I had to stay over. It caught us, like everyone, by a surprise, jumping off the bed, right before Sukkot, outside of the Sukkah to Simchat Torah. I think that it was a shock, like to everyone else. For me, I felt once, a few hours into it and understanding the scope of the situation and how odd it is. We didn't need to declare war, understanding that that's odd, what we're experiencing and what we're seeing. I opened the phone immediately as an observant Jew. I have to say, for my mother, it was, what are you doing? And for some reason, I can't explain that, it was an immediate reaction, that it was clear that it's a different situation having in the middle of a holiday, a siren. It's not normal in the center of Israel, and therefore something big must happen. From that moment on, I don't think it will be unusual to say I did not leave the news. I felt immediate call to the Jewish people. That was my call. I'm not on reserve duty, although I served for 2 years and very proud for my service. I was in intelligence. But I felt like that's a moment we have to be in Israel. We have to be together. We have to understand what's going on. So that was truly my moment, and understanding that I have two kids in the United States, and my husband and I are back and forth. So it was like, oh my God, what is going on? Would I be able to see my kids? I'm not a nervous person to start with, but the reality felt like I did not leave Israel for 7 weeks. I just came here, meaning I did not see my husband and my other two kids, like I'm on reserve. I felt like it's not possible to move an inch in days that every second matters.
And that's, I think, it's a feeling that was shared by so many people here and also across the US, kind of what a moment this was. How did the foundation respond? What was your kind of philanthropy, kind of professional thought, or kind of,
It's a good question. And I speak with many, many funders, and we work closely with many funding organization. And I would say that the immediate reaction was, our people, our country need us. So all the policies and the rules, what you usually have in place, are not relevant. We need to react like the army, and I don't want to get to call it any political statement, say like a security force is reacting. Okay, no proposals, no need to cut all the corners, get the money right to the field, right to the people. We usually in the foundation, for those that are maybe a little bit familiar, we let others react, because we say, okay, sometimes when you react, your funding doesn't go to where it needs to be, because it's populated by so many. In this time, it was clear to me that it's not the case. Like, we have to have an immediate reaction, and we put hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars right away to emergency need. But we did do our due diligence. Like, I didn't need others to feed me through their Jewish organizations. I know, because we work on the Israeli field, what is needed. And in the same time, we try not to do what everyone else is doing. And I'll give an example. We very much believe in creating long-stand impact and infrastructure for changes, because we're in the business of advocacy and building relationship and inclusion, which takes almost forever, because you create a culture, a language. So we said, what can we do right now in a war situation, in a feeling of emergency, that will pay off for the Israeli society the day after? So a few things that we found is, for example, we invest in the Haredi community in being Kitot Konenu, the
the guard
first
unit.
guard unit in each town and a city, because we figured that so many Haredi people want to give back, want to serve, but don't have the ability because they either not in the army or don't have any proper training. So we funded an organization by Shomer Chadash, the new guards, and they immediately, were able to put groups. So we're talking about like 20 groups in matters of few weeks in religious communities to train them to be, classes of, guards in their town. So that's one example that we know tomorrow after the war, some of them will enlist either in the army or in the police or in other security forces, or will stay as a community guard unit, which I think is valuable because we're talking about inclusion and participation in society, and we found ways in emergency. So that's one example. There are a few other examples. Hospitals that need to be, in immediate response. So we call it first responders. All the first responders that dealt with a tremendous stress, tremendous sorrow, tremendous, amount of emotions that they never experienced before. Someone has to see them. Someone has to make sure that they are able to give the service that they are, came for. So we have a special, a grant for the first responders. We did several things like that in order to create a strong support immediately that will create for the long run an infrastructure for the civil society in Israel.
Yeah, thank you, Shira. I want to say we're about to publish a report which is called United We Stand, which explores the Jewish American response in the first month, and the sums of money and funding that were also kind of raised were, I think, astounding. I think people maybe don't all know the numbers. We're talking about around $1 billion in the first month of the war. We're talking, as you said, very direct responses and people sending stuff over. There's a lot of stuff we don't even know about, J-Give campaigns for units and that kind of stuff. But I think, for many would say that this was very successful campaign on behalf of the federations, that the federations were it was an opportunity for them to prove, that the legacy organizations and systems and how they work. But I want to ask you as a strategic kind of, innovative philanthropist, how do you see that moving forward? How do you see the relations between the kind of federation philanthropy and the kind of philanthropy that you're trying to pull forward?
I would say two things. First of all, the organized Jewish community has its own challenges. The domestic challenges, internally right now, security and anti-Semitism and identity and many others. However, in times of crisis, and the pandemic was another crisis that we all experienced, the organized Jewish community proved itself still relevant because they have the infrastructure in place, they have the knowledge, the connections, the history. And what it taught me is that, as much as we all criticize the changes that need to be in place in the organized Jewish community, they need to be in place, no argument. I think we're in a lack of leadership in the Jewish world, period, not just in the state of Israel. We are lack of leadership, inspiration leadership. I think that we're confusing management with leadership all the time, because if we have good managers in place, it doesn't mean we are led, to very unified future. However, the organized Jewish community proved itself, in the ability to fundraise and to fundraise a massive amount of money. I would say, like the data shows, usually the big bulk of money comes from a small group of people. It does not mean that the entire Jewish community is participating in caring or in being committed to either the state of Israel or to their own Jewish community. But in 1 month to raise $1 billion, that's an outstanding ability. And this could not be done if certain individuals and foundations did not understand that this is an existential threat to the state of Israel and to the Jewish people. The understanding of the immediate response on philanthropists was so quick that I think that, if you ask me what I'm worried, we should not take it for granted. It's not going to happen in other cases so easily. Many people want to do fundraising right now. I'm being approached all the time. We don't have a budget. How we can do it? It doesn't mean now the Jewish community will start funding every organization in the state of Israel, but it does mean that the Jewish community is committed to the state of Israel, that we see our future together and depending on each other. If we admit it or not, that's a different story. However, I do want to say, David, like, this October 7th event is a wake-up call to the Jewish people. It's not a wake-up call only to the state of Israel. It's a wake-up call that we need to be united here. We need to work together. We need to understand that our connection to Israel is not something that we can run away from, because there are many, many times we Jews, and I say individuals or organizations, try to disconnect Israel from the Jewish story that we have here. It's not possible. We have a connection. We are depending on each other. Our future will be written together. Meaning, we have a research in the foundation I can share that shows few things. A, that the new anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. So for those of us that think, anti-Semitism doesn't exist, it's mainly because of the government of Israel, the research showed that there's almost no difference. It comes from different values and different ways to approach anti-Semitism, meaning one, the right wing says classic anti-Semitism, white colonialism, like that's it. And the left is referring to policies and liberalism, which leads to the same reaction. Hate of Jews, hate of Israel. There is another connection between whatever we experience on social media, and this research that I'm referring to was done on Twitter, and specifically 100 million tweets were checked to see these connections between anti-Semitism to anti-Zionism. And another thing is between what we experience on social media, which is a lot of hate. A lot of people feel comfortable to, be so evil to all of us because they can hide behind the screen. So the connection shows that whatever experiences we're going to see on the website, on the social media platforms, we will find on the streets. And we saw it right after these waves. We saw a big wave of physical, violence against Jews and Jewish institutions, including murdering someone. So it's important for us as Jews to understand that words leads to action. Words create reality, and our connection and our dependency on each other, even if we try very hard to disconnect it, is there.
So you talk, Shira, about a wake-up call for the Jewish people worldwide, and you just described the other side. I think so many American Jews, I think, were surprised. So were we in Israel by the speed in which things turned out. From the grieving of October 7th to the outburst of anti-Semitism, which was so quick, with like a day or two after that. And in and of itself, that's a question how that is that can happen. But I think it strengthens this idea that we are bound together by what we thought was anti-Zionism, and turns out to contain such a strong anti-Semitic element.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm maybe I'm in the business. That's what I do every day.
Yeah.
I was not as surprised.
No, I was certainly not.
I was not as surprised, and I think that to my fellow Jewish community members in the United States, I would say, if you live in reality and understand what's going on, you should not be surprised, because underneath there was always a lot of issues, and we saw it bubbling for the last few years, by the way. If you see the reports of ADL, anti-Semitism on our rise much before October 7th, much before. On October 7th, of course, it jumped to numbers and violent experiences that, I think that we all are sad and horrified by, but it was under because we as Jews accepted certain things that I think we should not. For example, Jews are not a minority. I mean, Jews are not being perceived as a minority in the United States because of the fact that we're successful. But hey, friends, we are a minority. We are 2% of the population. We are tiny minority. Okay, a lot of Jews do not feel, think, and speak like it. It is a compliment, became a compliment over the years that we are considered as privileged because we see assimilation of success. When I say assimilation or integration, maybe not assimilation, integration in society as a badge of honor because we were so successful that we got confused when someone says to us, you are white privilege. We are not white privilege. We have to know the facts. It's okay. We're proud Americans. We are proud leaders. We can be proud politicians. We can be proud CEOs. Amazing. But we are not white privilege. We are a minority.
I want to build up on that because it's something I've really been reading recently and writing about, and I want to emphasize what you're saying. I think at the moment, American Jews in the last decade or so actually lost their minority status, and to the extent that they lost their minority status, mostly on account of the racial discourse, which does not in any way account for the Jewish experience throughout history, for the Jewish experience in America. Jews were not perceived as white in 1909, where they were trying to make entry criteria for immigrants. Jews were not perceived as white in the US in 1909. And this discourse of race is not for the benefit of the Jews, and they're learning it, and we are learning it. I'm sad to say, and American Jews have lost a certain form of protection that's minorities are entitled to have, and that's where we are at this moment of anti-Semitism.
Because it doesn't feel an honor for us to be a minority, because minority usually has, classified by certain either socioeconomic situation or by certain demographic or even by certain history and rights to their future. I always laugh. I have 4 kids. I have kids in college and in prestigious they are, these colleges, and they are one, some of them are in the Ivy League schools. I'm horrified that my kids need to go, because for me, when you need to be less proud or less vocal with your own identity, that's a sign of we cross the board, cross the limits, and that's it. No price can take over it. When you cannot say I'm a proud Jew, I'm a proud Israeli, I can wear my Star of David, because it's not, when you have a professor of a Columbia University writing an op-ed saying, I would not send my own kids to the schools. We have to be careful not to let this success make us blind. And it's very easy, David, I want to tell you, it's very easy to feel, because the Jewish community is a success story. We live here for 350 years. We, until October 7th, maybe, or the last year, probably experienced the best time of the Jewish community ever. Definitely in the United States, but definitely in the world. And it became an issue to understand that as a minority, it's important to keep our rights as a minority, because we are small in numbers. And when you're small in numbers, you would probably won't have the ability to overwhelm others. It's just not that the numbers do not match. And we got confused to the point that our own Jewish students, my kids go, I have 4 kids, our own Jewish students doubting our own values. They are sometimes not sure, maybe the history, maybe they have a good reason. No reason is acceptable to go through what we went through. And no reason is acceptable to be fearful in academic institution in the United States, which is the greatest democracy in the world. So for me, it is crucial that we strengthen our identity and our ability to go back to certain definitions and to accept the fact that we are a successful minority, but we are a minority, to accept the fact that, success does not need to interrupt our shared responsibility as citizens of the United States,
I want to point to something you said about small in numbers. I think I've learned this from a communication expert, that what happens with the small in numbers now is because of social media, it's really playing out, right? We are in this big kind of bowl of media in which so many people are creating so much output against us, and it becomes a number game that we need to see how we can address. And this world of academia, I wanted to ask you this as a Jewish mom. I don't know if you know, there's a Facebook group now of 50,000 Jewish moms, which are kind of asking themselves, are we sending our kids to college next year? How are we feeling safe? And I think most importantly, what you said, college or the academic kind of sphere creates this kind of language and identity and discourse which our kids or feel that they can no longer be Jewish in. And you know, that's, are we really willing to kind of, you know, risk that? How do we overcome that? How do we change that system? I think that's a great question that we all need to address at the moment. Any ideas about how we can help the academic system at this time?
I would first of all point out that today in Congress, 5 presidents of prestigious universities are being called for a hearing, which is something that happens very rarely, and definitely academic institutions were not called for hearings in the last many years. And it's due to anti-Semitism and the unsafety feeling of Jewish students in universities. And why these universities, which Harvard and Columbia, by the way, are part of this hearing, it's because I think academic institutions went beyond the boundaries of freedom of speech. For a long time, we were just quiet because we don't want to make noise. Because and please don't get me wrong, the people on the call here, I know a lot of us are part of the Jewish community and the organized Jewish community, and there are many organizations on campuses. However, we are not united on campuses. We're pulling the students to so many different directions that a student needs to choose between 23 organizations working on campus, all Jewish. They ask me, what is the difference? Okay, everything is the number. So we need to be more effective. We need to stop accepting the freedom of speech. It means speech of hate. That's not freedom of speech. That's not. We all live in democracy. No, it's not. We need to strengthen those that standing up, like the president of Brandeis University, which is the university for the Jewish people in my mind, that was established because we were not welcomed, not 2,000 years ago, okay, 70 years ago to any university. We need to strengthen our managers, our leaders that standing up. The Ofer family made, I think, a very, very courageous decision to pull their money outside of Harvard as a statement. We would not put our money where we cannot feel safe, and you cannot stand for the right side of history in this case. Many others came along, or maybe not enough, but few others, if it's the Wexner and few other funders. I think that the academia needs to be called to order. I have to say it. It's not possible that student can walk into a class and a professor in NYU, okay, which again, my kids are all part of this reality, will say the following in the beginning of the year: if you think to take days off for upcoming holidays, we all know what holiday is coming in September, okay? It's not, the Ramadan is not taking place in September. You better drop this class. Or where a professor at Columbia says, I am entitled to say what I believe in front of any student, and a Jewish student is going to them and say, Professor, I am Jewish. How can you speak like that? He said, I don't see the problem. I don't see the problem. And I can go on and on. And what I'm trying to tell you, that's not freedom of speech. Okay? That's intimidating our younger generation that are proud Americans. They are proud Americans. They, let's just remind ourselves that if you go, and I can do this exercise with probably you, I don't need to tell you. American Jews, first of all, say, I'm an American, and then they say they're Jewish. They're not first Jewish and then Americans. meaning that their national identity is the number one, which I'm saying it in a lot of respect. So why an American, just because he's Jewish, cannot feel comfortable in his own country when he chooses to go to certain places, definitely when there are universities. So that's not acceptable. And I think that, before we get to be surprised even more so than for today, we need to understand the boundaries, that things that start with Jews, if you learn history, things that start with Jews do not end with Jews. It always grow to include other groups, other minorities that, if you allow yourself to speak against one, you'll speak against another. And I think, unfortunately, it's amelacha. The job is on the Jews to fight these, situations and to stand up for the proper values and the brighter future for Western societies.
Exactly. Yeah, I met so many, before we move to the last question, just maybe just one more observation from university. At the University of Chicago, I met so many, Jewish students that are essentially intimidated, but, it's an environment of intimidation. And it's, this is University of Chicago is where fun comes to die. This is supposed to be the most intellectually rigorous university, and it ends up with, a faculty that think the same, a unified kind of approach, which is kind of, something that's really went wrong with academia. And we as academics, A, need to understand what went wrong, and B, we need to create an alternative. And these Jewish students are aching for an alternative that can kind of, have a fair discourse about the variety of topics, and everything has become really so narrowed down in a way that we really need, I think, to push back against and find the ways of breaking through that. I want to, as the last question, kind of ask you, looking forward and kind of as a vision, what would be, also I just said, we're approaching Hanukkah. We want to what is your vision of unity for Israel and American Jews at the moment, and what do we need to do to get there? What are the next steps for us, and what do you expect Israeli leaders to do? What do you expect Jewish American leadership to do?
First of all, it's a big question, and unity is a big word and big goal. And I think that sometimes we're scared, all of us, when we hear unity, it means my view is canceled or my identity is being blended into others. And the foundation has a beautiful partnership with the IAC where we call Achdut lelo achidut, unity without informity, meaning you do not lose yourself by working together. But how can you work together if you have few things in place? Okay. A, you need to be confident, first of all, in your own identity. You cannot be intimidated. Everyone that's challenging you or disagree with you, you immediately feel I cannot work together, which happened to us over, the last decades. Funders, organizations, activists, every time they disagree with someone, they go and start a new organization, new initiative, no longer. We need to come together. We need to be able to work out some disagreement. It's okay. We don't always have to agree. Number two, if we don't have common goals, we would not be able to have unity. Why are we so united right now? Because we have a common goal. Fear and anti-Semitism in the United States is a common goal for Jews. Existence in the state of Israel is a common goal. We need now to be in a war. When we have a common goal, look what happened. Your view is being focused and channeled towards the goal. So the things that you disagree or you're not comfortable with do not become the center of the story. That's what we need. We need to define, we at the foundation, I personally said it for the last 20 years, the last 10 years, much more vocal, okay, in levels of the presidents, and we need a common goal. We need to create the new common goal. When we had a common goal, like let's establish the state of Israel, we were amazing together, despite all our differences. Let's save the Jews from Ethiopia. Let's help Ukraine. We are able to work together. We are able to make things reality. So in order to have unity, We need strong identity. We need to make sure that we're speaking the same values. We are not, David, we are not. If you ask different groups in the Jewish community or in the state of Israel, in the past, we used to say family, home, it meant one thing to us. It was clear. Today you say family, you say, not sure, depend what family refer to, home. I have few homes, I don't have to be in one place. So the meaning of our values changed. We need to make sure that the definition is clear among us all. So when we say few values, we all refer to the same in order for us to create a common goal so we can work towards something together with the understanding that we are not one person. We are United Nation, not in the UN refer. I'm saying is a unity for our nation, to make it clear. My opinion about the UN is definitely not high these days. They just having today, while we talk, I think, a conversation in the UN on female rights after it took them almost 2 months to recognize that Jewish and Israeli citizens are equal in their attention, their rights, and their ability of women and female organization to speak up. It just took them 2 months. So we understand we cannot rely on anyone other on ourselves.
Thank you, Shira. So I'm just to add to that a bit. I've been thinking about this idea of the unity of opposites sometimes between Israel and American Jews. Unity is not necessarily between people that are the same. And what happened in like the liberal kind of world and the kind of everything, there's a process of purification. You keep on looking who's pure enough for you, who's liberal enough for you, who is, that's led to a certain tension in that I think is not really necessary between Israel and American Jews. And there's a need to kind of step back and to move into a space, an intellectual space, especially for the younger generation and for our students, which offers something different than what we see at the moment. And really, I think, it's a wake-up call for everybody. It's been a wake-up call for me, for the program, for everybody that's exploring this issue. We need to give young American Jews another option of analyzing the world and understanding Israel from that point of view. And we need to do a lot of work in Israel, which we've been doing for so long, of having Israelis understand the Jewish American life, and that's what we are essentially all focused on. So thank you very much, Shira. And let's open it up for a few questions, maybe, if people want to either speak up or write in the chat. I think, Riyad, you want to take it from here?
Yes, David, I do want to look at a few of the comments that we have on the chat. First of all, from Scott, if you want to unmute yourself and just say a few words, and if not, I can just read, or David can read the chat. But Scott is saying about, and then maybe to look at Julia's question and maybe Jill as well. So David, if you want to read it from the chat, maybe Scott's comment.
Sure, well, I'll pick up the questions from the chat. So Scott's question was, or comment was, I think the surprise may partially be a result of apathy on the part of many American Jews. I'm admittedly one of these Jews. We've been living in a relatively quiet period, but have now been reminded of the virulent anti-Semitism that has been and will unfortunately continue to be prevalent.
Right. And if I may, I'll just say that as well. My concern now is that not enough of my peer group is engaging in the activist work we need to push back on what has been prevalent and vociferous protesting especially in New York City, where I am, pro-Palestinian protesting. And what concerns me is that I'm not doing enough, and I think some of my brethren aren't doing enough to be as vociferous. So I'm looking for ways to try to do what I can as the chief program officer up in Northern Manhattan to if not protest, generate protest, and at least in some quiet way be demonstrative about what's happening here. I think I'll close it just by pointing out to anyone who's not in the New York City area. I get a report from our security firm of all the protests that occur on a daily basis. Every day there's a protest. In fact, I had to evacuate one of my campuses about 5 minutes from here because there's a pro-Palestinian protest outside, and it's not directed towards us. It's actually directed to a congressman, a lawmaker who is supporting Israel. So that's a concern I have now that I've woken up.
Thanks very much. I'll respond in a minute, and then maybe Shira. We have a 10-day program to the US, which is in Boston and in New York. And for this year, for the first time ever, we're thinking that we're going to need security for our program as an Israeli group in New York City. We're staying at the NYU dorms. We've encountered occasional issues, but this is an alarming kind of development that we're looking into. I want to say two other aspects of anti-Semitism we've encountered also in recent research. One of them is actually on former Soviet Union Jews. We have a person who had just written about former Soviet Union Jews in the US, and they were not surprised. I just want to put them out as one community that was kind of, we've seen this coming. So there's likely obviously this depends on a few factors, but just to say that there's also a mindset behind that. And also, when people sometimes tell me that they don't feel anti-Semitism in New York, I ask them whether they're visibly Jewish. Like, obviously, once it's part of the ultra-Orthodox community has been experiencing this as well, but a lot of the anti-Semitism, the earlier anti-Semitism, has been directed kind of towards people who are more visibly, identifiable as Jewish. And now it's sipping into the institutions and kind of the wider kind of front. And I wish we feel for you, and we hope there's anything we can do from our side. Shira.
I think what you're saying, Scott, is it led Israel to say, what can we do to American Jewry? What can we do to support? Which I think for those of us that are in this call, it has to be clear that it's not giving, because it's usually American Jewry that's asking, what can we do to support Israel? What can we do in the midst of a war? Okay, you have CEOs, activist funders asking, what can we do to be helpful? And I think it's an opportunity for us to understand that our relationship is mutual and it is okay to stand for each other. More specifically to your question, I have to say that in New York, I think it's very difficult because on one hand, the numbers of Jews is the largest probably in many other places. So some people can feel very secure and in a bubble, which is a good bubble to have. I don't think we need to be ashamed to say sometimes we need to be in our bubbles. Bubbles is also good. My kids go to a Jewish day school. I think it's great. I want them to feel safe and good among others. I don't want to be shy or ashamed about it. In the same time, two advices that I received, two opinions, I don't know if advices, but two opinions that I received just recently, the last few days on constant meetings. We need to work quietly in order to get things done. And we need to know what to put out loud. And that's important. The designation between quietly get the work done. At the end, we need to change curriculum in universities. At the end, that's not going to be done on social media. That's not going to be done with our kids yelling in rallies. It's not going to be done. And it's important. And there are many, many Jewish prominent funders that work like that will choose this path. With the young adults, I think we need to make them feel that they're being heard. And they need to feel comfortable to speak out loud. And we need to find the formats for them to do that. I do think it's important. Coming together, 300,000 Jews in DC was a statement not just for the world and for the government of the United States. It was for the Jews also to say, you're not alone. We are in it together. There are many people thinking like us. I know 3 of my kids went, and many of my friends and husband, and it makes them feel good for a moment. And I think it's important that we find the moments that we can come together and strengthen ourselves. So it's a long answer to tell you that there's no one answer, no one path, no one action that can lead to this reality.
Thank you, Shira. I want to first of all acknowledge Jill's comment as well, and she was thanking you and both of us maybe on addressing the issue of campuses. And we spoke about this, and maybe we'll leave a few words for this to the close. But really, speaking up about the situation in campuses, and this takes us also to Julia's question, which I think is the question in many ways from my point of view, which is how do we get back the minority status when progressives have distilled minority status to power and perceived oppression? And I think we are at the moment where we understand just how dangerous the situation is becoming for American Jews and for Israel in relation to that ideology. Essentially, the current progressive liberal ideology is essentially a very black and white reading of you're either in this camp or the other, all nuance is lost. And in that discussion of the right side of history, there's nothing we can do at the moment to change our situation vis-a-vis that ideology. And I think there is a deep desire and need in campuses between students for an alternative. We need to develop a deeper understanding, an alternative, educational alternative for young American Jews on campuses, off campuses, A. B, and this follows up on something that Shira said, we need to acknowledge and instill in them a sense of separatedness. The success of the Jewish integration story leads to a situation where you feel when you are somehow put in a separateness kind of situation, somewhat being separated from your peers or the pressure groups is an extremely alarming situation for many young American Jews, and they need to have, I'll say this very bluntly, the spine to be able to stand up and say, we are Jews and we sometimes are different. We are sometimes perceived and different. And the third thing, which I said to 11 students when they asked me this at the University of Chicago, only Jews make the rules about what Jews do, what Jewish is and what is not Jewish, what are the right views about Israel. We need to be able to make the in-group of young American Jews and have the discussions there, and not kind of succumb to the external pressure that always comes from the situation outside. And the fourth and last thing, which I say very bluntly to young American Jews, you are not white. Okay, like reducing Jewish history and the Jewish experience and what it is to be Jewish to whiteness is a strategy that's been deployed against you, and we are seeing the results of that now. You're Jewish, and
I want to add to that a bit to say that my grandmother, Zechronah Levacha, may her memory will be blessed. One came from India and one came from Iran. They would probably come out of the grave to laugh or to hug me, to say, people see me as white. And I said that to all of us, to say that yes, the American Jewish community, the majority came from Europe, but if you know history and you understand minority and you understand where they came to Europe from and how things came about, and it's not a badge of being less if you're not recognized as white. And I think that's what causes. I do want to say a few things. And maybe October 7th made me a little bit more clear or more extreme to some of those that don't know me. But we are for too long living in the power mentality. Power mentality means everything is okay. As long as you don't, take from me, everything is okay. Whatever you think is okay. I have to say, I said it to my kids all the time, there's no power mentality. You either stand by something or for something, or you don't. You cannot slap someone and say, I'm sorry. And because you said you're sorry, the slap does not count. It means that we need to know what we're standing up for. And not everything is okay. And not everything is allowed. No, not everything. And sometimes by making a choice, you give up on some things. And it is okay. When you cannot eat peanuts or you are vegetarian, you give up on certain things. The price is known. It's okay. Okay, so to be a proud Jew or stand up for certain things, as a Jewish person, it's okay. The other thing I want to say, actions count, and we should pay attention to our actions. If we speak up because we're saying we're criticizing Israel because that's my way to feel, involved in Israel, and it's okay to be critical, I want to say to myself, it's okay to a certain limit. Okay? Depends where you criticize, depends how you criticize, depends what you say. It does matter. Our actions count by others. When you see a Jew with a kippah, it doesn't matter man or woman, in a pro-Palestine event, it's confusing to the public. Okay, we need to understand that, sometimes it's okay to have the laundry in-house. We don't always have to hang it outside. It doesn't have to change the game, the rules of the game, which we changed dramatically, and I think we're paying the price. And the last thing I would say, we sometimes need to strengthen ourselves. I said that over this conversation a few times. So if this time means we need to maybe send our kids to certain places more and give up on others, it's okay. It means that if I need to choose Brandeis or NYU to certain, I would say let's choose. Let's strengthen our own institutions, our own organizations, our own hospitals, our own networks. That's how we're going to be strong for the long term. It doesn't mean that we give up. It doesn't mean that we choose not to be part of the secular or the general society. It means that if we need to hold them both, that one time, one area needs a little bit more strength, our community, our people need more strength. And I'll end by saying that there is no Jewish journey or Jewish future without strong state of Israel. And a strong state of Israel is committed by definition to the Jewish people. So whatever happens to Jewish people outside of Israel is the state of Israel's business. And we have each other, and we need to care for each other. And I know that it looks black, and it is right now frightening and uncomfortable and probably, however, the future will be better. This is the dark time. We will be in good times. And in order to be in good times, in a good shape, we need to calculate our steps and put our money in smart places so we can come out of it stronger. And come out of it stronger means that you're more unified, that we learn from mistakes, that we stand up for the right things, and we do not let others treat us the way, we're experiencing it right now. So I am not just hopeful, I'm optimistic. For those that wonder what's the difference, I would say hopeful, it's a passive. You see it and you hope for something good is going to happen. An optimist means that you take an action. You create part of your future, and I am optimistic knowing that we're all going to, do our best to create a better future for all of us.
Thank you very much, Shira.
I really want to thank you both, Shira Ruderman and Dr. David Barak Gorodtsky. I do want to say that it was just so important for each of us, even for me in Jerusalem and for those of you who are in the States. And we have a recording. I really want our JCCs all around North America to hear what you just said. And I know that they will have the opportunity to hear it. It's 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in America. We'll wait for a few hours. We'll share it with our members. And I think the strong words of actions of what we are doing, of pride, I think this is something that we all need right now. I can't thank you enough for being here, for participating. I just want to say that we have 2 more calls happening. One is tomorrow, Mitchabrim, our 3rd call with 2 artists from Gaza Envelope who will perform for us live, including Sar Liben, and our last and final Mitchabrim call on this year, at least for 2023, will be December 20th with Dr. Einat Wilf and Dr. Shani Moore. That's our next call. I want to thank you all so much. Have a great day in America. Have a good night in Israel. תודה רבה שירה ותודה רבה דוד.
שמח. Thank you.
תודה רבה לכולם. להתראות.